So what should you look for to see if your room is balanced? Hi everyone, it's Carol from Discover Interior Design, and I'm so glad you're here. In this video, I'm going to give you a checklist of different items that you can use to look at a room to see if it looks and feels balanced, and how you can make some small changes to create a more balanced look. So let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to do, let's take a look at our checklist that we're going to use to kind of review and see how our rooms are working. And our checklist is a list of 6 different things. And actually all of these different little checklist points are the design elements. So all of those different elements that we use to help bring a room together, help create a wonderful design to a room. And the cool thing about this is that we can look at each one of those design elements. We can look through the lens of each of those design elements to see how our room is working in a balanced way. And then at the same time, use those design elements to help improve things and to make some corrections if we need to. And so using our checklist, we can go down that list of design elements to take a look at the balance in a room. And what we're looking for is just a sense of balance, a sense of some sort of equilibrium, so that when we're in that room, we get a sense that everything is kind of coming together, that there isn't one area of the room that is kind of overpowering the rest of the room. And naturally in our rooms, we are always going to have different variations, different levels of visual weight. And visual weight just has to do with how much something is grabbing our attention. So a room may have a focal area, and that will have a lot of visual weight. A focal area may be a fireplace or a bed with side tables on either side, and that grouping is going to have a lot of visual weight. But what we want to get a sense of in our rooms is some sort of equilibrium. And so when we do have different areas of our room that maybe have more visual weight, is there some way to kind of even things out a little bit or offset the visual weight just by using the design elements to kind of help bring everything together. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take you through this process of using this checklist to check the balance of a room. And you can follow along with me and do this in one of your rooms as well, or watch the entire video and then do this on your own time. And this checklist is actually helpful too when you are designing a room from scratch, and making sure that you remember all the design elements and using all the design elements as well as the design principles to help you create a space that is going to be functional and look beautiful. So what I'm going to do is use an example room to take us through the lens of each of these design elements to check and see the balance for a room. So the first design element that we're going to look at is space. And what I want you to think about when we're thinking about space is it's just having to do with how the arrangement of different pieces of furniture and other elements in the room are creating a balanced look. And I want you to kind of look and see if your room looks and feels pretty balanced. Most likely you'll have one area or a couple areas in your room that will have more visual weight to them. But is there an offset of that visual weight in other areas of the room? So there's still a sense of equilibrium. And if there isn't, then is there some way that you can maybe move a couple pieces of furniture around, or even move artwork on some of your walls, or put artwork on some of your walls? Because the other thing you want to think about is not just the horizontal space in your room, but also the vertical space, and using your walls to help you create a balanced look as well. And so in our example room, I think that this space looks pretty balanced. There is a seating arrangement on the right side and then a TV wall area on the left side. There's more visual weight where the seating arrangement is. There's a lot of furniture over there and a lot going on over there. And so naturally it has more visual weight. But there is, a console cabinet over on the TV wall as well as the TV. And so that's kind of helping to maybe offset that balance a little bit. If we wanted to, maybe we could rearrange a couple of those chairs, maybe move one of the chairs over to that TV wall or by the draperies and maybe make a little reading area. The other thing to think about is the vertical space that's going on in this room. We have draperies on the window wall, so that helps bring some visual weight over there. But one thing that's missing a lot in this room is artwork. So making sure to balance out the room by hanging some artwork over by the TV wall as well as where the sofa wall is. And that will probably help to tie everything together a little bit more as well. And the next way that you can look at your room is through the design element of light. And at night, I want you to check and see that you have some nice overall lighting to the room. And each room is different. A living room will probably have softer lighting compared to a kitchen. But just make sure that you have some nice overall lighting. And then take a look at the layout of the lighting. Where do you have different lighting? Is there a sense of balance? Or are there certain pockets of the room that maybe could use a little bit of lighting? Just check that there's enough lighting in the room and that there's a balance of lighting in the room. And if there isn't, what can you do to maybe change some lighting around or add a little bit more lighting so that there is more balance? And so if we were going to look at this room at night, we would notice that there's lighting shown on the wall from the light fixture in the ceiling. There is some light near the sofa from the table lamp. And if you use that task lamp, there would be some lighting shining down onto the floor. And at night, when the TV's on, that also adds some light over on the TV wall. I think what I would do in this room is I would kind of balance the light a little bit better. I think I would want to have lighting on either side of the sofa, so moving the side table and that table lamp on the other side of the sofa, and then make sure that there's another light on the other side so it's kind of balanced. And then if I did move one of those chairs over to the window near that task lamp, that would be perfect for someone to sit there and read, and they would have that task lamp. And one idea you could think about, on the TV wall, we don't need a lot of lighting over there necessarily. Maybe finding some kind of cool floor lamp that kind of adds a neat glow to that wall area. And the next item on our list is color. So if we're going to look through the lens of just color and taking a look at the balance of color in our room, a couple things you would want to keep in mind. One would be repetition, making sure that there's a nice repetition of color because that helps tie everything together. But also that there's variety so that we're not just using the same type of color or version of color everywhere, that there's some variety there. And that also that there is a balance of color in the room. So we don't just have color on one side of the room, that we have color and pockets of color in other areas of the room as well. And so if you have nice repetition of color in the room, but maybe you need to add more variety, well, think about using lighter or darker versions of colors, or using different saturation levels of colors, but also bring in other colors, like one or two other colors into a room. Right away will give more variety to that space. And so in our example room, the main color that's kind of going on in here are earth tones. And then there's an accent color of blue and maybe even a little bit of this softer green. And so there's a lot of repetition going on. There's a lot of repetition of the earth tones. And so that automatically is helping to tie everything together. And then just by bringing in that accent color, that helps to kind of add variety. So some small changes to create some more balance of color in this room would be to bring in colors on the artwork that would be on the TV wall as well as above the sofa, and maybe even bringing some patterns of combinations of different colors through the throw pillows or even a throw blanket. And you could even bring in some other accessories to add in other colors to this room. And the fourth item on our list is shape and form. So when you're looking at your room, make sure that you're repeating some nice shapes and forms throughout the room, but also that you're using different shapes and forms in your room so that there's a nice balance between the two. And so in this room, I think there's a pretty good balance between a variety of different shapes and forms. And there are a number of rectangular forms, but we can also see a lot of curvilinear forms. And so I think there's a nice balance between different shapes and forms in this room. And the fifth design element that we can look at is line in our room. And line just has to do with directions that our eyes are being led. So one thing to think about when you're looking at line in your room is to notice if there is a line, a certain direction that our eyes are being led that's kind of taking over, that has a lot of visual weight to it. And maybe that's kind of throwing off the balance a little bit in your room. And it depends on what's going on in your room, specifically to your room. But one thing to think about is how can you change the direction of the line so that there is more of a balance to the room. So one example of that would be where you have a room where you want to have more vertical lines. You feel like everything's kind of lower and more horizontal, and it's nice and calming, but you'd like to bring in more vertical lines. So one thing you could do is think about hanging draperies from the ceiling all the way to the floor in one color or even in vertical stripes. And right away, that would add some verticalness to that space. And then in our example room, let's just take a look at where that TV wall is. And we have the TV and this console cabinet piece of furniture. And everything is very horizontal, low and horizontal and wide. And what about breaking up that area a little bit by adding some shelving on the wall or adding a floor lamp, as I mentioned before, that's maybe kind of taller. And so it just adds some verticalness and kind of changes things up a little bit, kind of breaks up all of that horizontal look and feel that's going on and just kind of adds some variety to that area. So when we use the lens of texture to look at the balance in our room, we want to make sure that there is variety of textures in our room. There's repetition, but also variety. So when you're looking at your room, take notice of just all of the different textures, all the different materials and the textures that all of these different materials have. Get a sense if there is a nice balance between some different types of textures in the room and different materials in the room. And if there isn't, how can you change things up a little bit? By bringing in some different fabrics or bringing in a different texture or material of a piece of furniture. Anything to kind of add more variety to that space, just by thinking about texture will make a big difference. So in our example room, I think there's a variety of textures that are happening in this room, but I'm noticing that there's a lot of velvet type of fabric happening on the accent chairs, on those wing style chairs. And so if we were just going to keep all of the existing furniture, I think one thing I would think about doing is adding in throw pillows that aren't in velvet, adding in throw pillows that have a different texture on them and kind of mixing those things up a little bit. Or even adding in a throw blanket that had maybe a nubbier texture on it. Anything to kind of mix up those fabric textures would be really important to help create a more balanced look when we're just thinking about texture in this room. So I encourage you to use this checklist to take a look at each of your rooms and to kind of assess how everything is working and if everything looks and feels balanced. And then use the design elements to maybe make some small changes to help bring everything together. And I'd love to find out if you did do this and use this checklist to help you create a more balanced look to your space. And please share your process in the comments. And please share if you have any other ideas that we can use to create a balanced look to a room. Thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.